Hey, deserving listeners, The Ultimatum. Let's watch.
Right now, when do you look at what I want? Never have you asked what I want. Not once.
Here.
No, not once have you asked what I want. This whole fucking relationship. It's always what you want, what April wants when she wants it.
Sorry.
No, it's literally,
sorry
I've tried to explain this to you before.
Okay, so Jake and April are talking, and Jake is saying things like, you're always mad at me, you come home from work, you're always yelling at me, it's always about what you want, you never ask me what I want, it's always about what you want. And he starts to cry because he's hurt by that, and she starts to cry out of empathy and feels bad and wants to hug him. He's upset and angry, so he rejects her initiating a hug. And okay, if I were there, I would absolutely encourage him to continue to go to that place. I have a feeling that this is something that he doesn't think about very often, at the very least doesn't talk about very often, but it's there. And for some of us, particularly men, will experience childhoods and lifetimes that tell us that we're not supposed to complain, we're not supposed to cry, we're not supposed to have sadness, we're not supposed to think about these sorts of things. Complaining in a marriage is considered a female thing, and the nagging wife stereotype, which is of course ridiculous. Everyone, regardless of gender, regardless of relationship type, has occasional complaints or requests of the other person. In fact, I have a whole language system and sort of protocol in sessions with couples about how to generate complaints and how requests. Sorry, I actually say, let's not say complaint, let's say request, because that's usually what we're talking about. And I will have a way of, how do you frame the request in your heart? How do you say the request? How do you respond to the request? How do you check in on the request? Because a lot of requests that we make in relationships, it's not likely that your partner is going to be able to meet your request 100% of the time, especially when it's something like this. And the request might even be coming partially from your own relational trauma history. I wonder if for Jake, he had, if this was something that he had prior to meeting April, an experience of people not asking him what he wanted and discounting his needs. I don't know, but it kind of seems to be coming from a place like that. That would be my guess. Doesn't mean that April isn't a part of that, but it would perhaps be doubled the feeling in the moment because of what he's gone through prior to even meeting April. Now, a little detail about this is that I would want him to eventually, maybe not now because he's really raw and she seems to be taking it well, that I would have him make the language more accurate, because he's saying, you never listen to me. And this is a little tip that y'all can use. When you're making a request of your partner, or really anyone, stay away from terms like you always or you never, because it's probably not true and it's really hurtful. If you're ever a recipient of that kind of statement, especially from your partner, they come to you and say, you never listen to me. And you're like, I'm listening to you right now. What do you mean? I never listen to you. What? So one, that's a massive hurtful statement. Two, it's highly debatable. Three, it denies all the times when your partner has listened to you. So it's more accurate to say, I frequently feel like you're not listening to me, or I sometimes notice that you discount my feelings, or I sometimes feel like you're discounting my feelings. Something like that. And a little bit more tentative too, like, but this is kind of advanced stuff, but eventually you want to get to a place where you recognize that your subjective experience is subjective. And so sometimes I hope you all have experienced looking back thinking, wow, I was distorted then. I had this notion that my partner was this and that, but upon further reflection, I'm like, well, actually I was wrong. And that's important to have that humility and to be humble and to exhibit that, and to assume that whenever you're making a judgment call about your partner, there's a chance that at least part of what you're saying is distorted. So you want to say something like, look, I don't know if I'm completely off base here. I don't know if I'm just like in a bad mood or I'm seeing things wrong. So take that with a grain of salt. But I often feel like you don't really care about me. Now, maybe that's partially my fault because I don't speak up enough, but I don't know. I just feel like in this relationship, I frequently feel sad that you don't seem to really put the effort into asking me my experience or asking me what I want out of my life. You're really good, because instead of Jake saying to April, it's always about you, you would say, you're really good at it. Because why can't someone assert what they want? She wants kids and marriage. That's what's wrong with her asserting that. So, you want to frame it in a way, you're really good at asserting what you want. Sometimes it's a little overbearing, but, I'm proud of you, or I like that about you, that you can say what you want. I think I have a harder time with that. And I think I need you to help me with that by actually putting effort into getting that from me and creating space for that. It's a much more acceptable thing that I said, right? The way I modeled it if I were Jake. Now, in this moment, I wouldn't just stomp all over Jake and say, tone it down, because he's in a place right now and therapy takes a long time.
I keep a lot of shit in.
I don't want you to keep anything in with me.
Well, I can't talk to you about it because you get mad at me and then it starts.
Right, so he's saying, I keep a lot of stuff in. Now, I think what he's saying is I keep a lot of stuff in because of you, but I suspect that that's a defense that predates her, but I don't know.
It's another argument. Every fucking time.
That hurts for you to feel like that, because I do not want you to ever feel like that, because you are so important to me.
So she's doing good. She is crying. She seems genuine. She seems like she cares. She had an interesting phrase earlier where she says, I'm so sorry that you feel that way. It's good. You don't want your partner to feel that way. A more helpful way to say it is, I'm so sorry I've done that to you and made you feel that way. But I think she's basically saying that, but I don't know.
And I'm
Well, then
sorry.
why?
And I'm sorry. But we do compromise on certain
We
things
don't
too.
compromise. There's never been a compromise. It's always how many?
She's trying to make a case that she's not because basically, if you just take his verbatim complaint about her, she's an evil, psychopathic person. It's always about you. You never ask me what I want. You don't care about what I want. You're always yelling at me and shutting me down. I mean, maybe that's true, but I have a feeling it's not that in that direction, that far in that direction. And so she's trying to defend herself. If I were there, I would say, let's not go there. I have a feeling Jake rarely exhibits this kind of expression. And so you want to cultivate that. You want to make him feel comfortable. And so that he's more likely to do it more often. He's probably expressing things that have piled up for months, and it's not going to come out in a differentiated, mature, balanced way. So you want to really prove in these moments, if you're April, that it's okay that he said it, and you'll hear him. Now, you don't have to solve the problem in the moment. That's what a lot of people will feel compelled to do if you're in April's position. You feel like, oh, I got to solve this. It's like, no. And this is a across the board, whether you're a therapist or not. The solution often to the problem when we're hearing someone complain like this is literally just listening to them and understanding them and proving that you understand them. Sometimes that is the solution. You don't have to, and plus you can't fix the problem. Often what the Jakes of the world are looking for is, do you really understand my experience, and do you really appreciate what's happening? Because if you really appreciate it, I trust that you will actually adjust your behavior in the future. You might even say that. You might even say, I understand. This is what you're saying. I get it. I didn't know that, but I can see where you would feel that way, and know that I now will carry this with me to try to guide my behavior in the future.
How many times have I repeated this? Always what April wants when she wants it. Should I just stay with you because you're crying and I feel bad, or should I look out for what I really want in life? Do you understand what
I mean, that's pretty cold. Well, she's the one with the ultimatum. It's kind of mean. I don't know what their relationship has been like, obviously, but I'm wondering where he's coming from. Does he feel pre-guilty about being with someone else? Does he not want to be with her? Often when people see people crying, it makes you feel bad, and then you're like, okay, I won't leave you. Okay, I'll marry you. Or there's this compulsion to try to get someone to stop crying because you feel guilty, and then you sort of forego what you want. And maybe he's like, arguing with himself in this moment. Like he has that impulse. He's like, what am I supposed to just stay with you because you're crying? That kind of thing. Because what, again, another blanket statement, whether you're a therapist or otherwise, is crying is crying. Of course she's crying. He's crying. It's sad. This is a sad situation. There's a lot of hurt. There's a lot of pain. There's a lot of regret. So you cry. It's a natural human response. So you don't have to, take it like, oh my God, a disaster is happening.
Understand what I've been trying to explain to you this whole damn time.
Drake, we said this walking, like if you are feeling somebody, be open and honest with me. You're not.
And that's why I'm
feelings,
being open and honest with you.
And I
But I feel
appreciate
bad for doing that, because if I do choose to go with that person, you're going to be devastated and I'm going to feel bad. At the end of these 3 weeks, I may be like, yeah, April is the one. I'm going to work on with her.
Yeah, one, I think they're fairly intoxicated. I don't know about them, but they were all drinking a lot just before this moment. So that's, I'm guessing, an element. And they're on camera, so I think that it's always something we have to consider, that there's multiple people in the room actually, filming them, recording the sound, da-da-da-da. So you just have to wonder how that affects things. But so, yeah, I think what he's saying is, I think what's happening deep down for him is so let me take a guess, that for Jake, he grew up in a family life or a societal life that was not very encouraging of him to be vulnerable and to acknowledge his needs and to try. He was in the military. I don't know if that has a role in it. We could imagine. But he has a defense about trying to just put his head down and be dutiful or be the stable one or something. And he's denying his own needs, maybe partially throughout his life. He meets April and he fits well with her because he does that. And her needs are more out there, and so they complement each other in that way. And he would often let her kind of guide the show, and while either adjusting or secretly resenting that, and wasn't really acknowledging it. This is a lot of speculation, but I've seen this sort of thing before. And then now, and she's like, I want to get married, and something's holding him back. He doesn't know exactly what it is, because he's not often looking at his needs and what he wants. He just has this sense that it's just not right. And he might have like cognitive hallmarks or milestones or cornerstones that he can identify, like, well, I think I don't want to marry because of this, but really it might be because he doesn't feel like he's being paid attention to, partially because of her, but partially because of his defenses of shutting himself down, because when he was younger, people didn't hear it or something. And so they go on this show, and for the first time for him, he is now really in his heart, especially on this day, considering, because Ray is into him and just publicly announced that she wanted to be with him, that for Jake, he's now emotionally extracted from April and is now able to more freely think about his feelings, because he said earlier, like, if I end up with someone else, I'm going to feel guilty. So it's like this dominant feeling of guilt. And often for people, when we're guilt tripped as children chronically, we have a huge sensitivity, and we'll do elaborate things internally and externally to avoid any possibility of guilt, and we'll end up causing problems that actually cause more guilt for us because we sabotage our relationships. Anyway, that's a long story, but so it's a lot of speculation. But and then he starts to wonder, wow, well, okay, I'm actually going to start to be with someone else, and then immediately he's thinking, I'm gonna break her heart. I'm gonna break April's heart, and that devastates me, because I don't. It's so some people who have a fear of commitment, this is actually their problem. Their trauma is that when they were young, there was a chronic experience of the child just being themselves, and someone in their family, say a parent, would guilt trip the child and turn away, and they would say, like, well, if you're gonna be like that, then I'm gonna give you the cold shoulder for the next 2 days. And as an 8-year-old, you're like, what did I do? I'm being rejected because of what I did. I'm being made to feel guilty about something that I feel like isn't really my fault, but the person I worship considers it my fault, so it is my fault, and I'm a bad person because I did something bad. And one of the schema behaviors that we can exhibit to or develop as a pattern to avoid that guilt is to avoid any situation where we might be made to feel guilty, which is to avoid closeness in relationships. Because if you're not close, then you can't be guilt tripped for having hurt someone's feelings. Or by constantly getting out ahead of these kinds of conflicts by really convincing yourself and the other person that it's their fault. No, I am completely, guiltless. It's your fault. This is all your fault. Rather than, of course, recognizing that it's either circumstantial or it's the two of you. Anyway.
We have every single box checked off. Like, I never had that. I never thought that was impossible with the bromance. Like someone, like a best friend I would have. But I still have love for you because we've been together for 2 years. So it's like, fuck me. What do I do?
Okay, I'm not exactly sure what he's saying. I think he's saying there's another woman that he is way more similar to than April. And then he says, well, but we're together because we've been together for 2 years. Like, he doesn't say we're together because we're so great together. So it kind of sounds like he is saying to himself he doesn't want to be with April. I don't know.
I'm gonna be honest, like, I feel like they kind of like ask a lot about like how I'm feeling and like really embracing of like my feelings and my emotions and stuff. And so like that has been something I feel like I guess I didn't realize how much I needed.
Okay, this is really interesting. The contrast between Shanique and Jake in terms of how Shanique is communicating almost the identical experience to Randall. So we heard Jake saying to April, just trying to get all their names right, that Jake was saying, you never listen to me. It's always about you. It's never about me. You don't care about my feelings. You never, just all these, you always, you never. And when April's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. He's like, no. And where it's fine, he's having a moment and it's hard for him. But in terms of if you're in a space where you're about to make a request or a complaint, you want to, because the goal presumably is you want your partner to hear you and to change, right? You're voicing it because you want them to understand you and to change their behavior so that you can get your needs met so that you can have a good relationship. And if it comes across as unreasonable and distorted and exaggeratory and debatable and wrong and hurtful and accusatory, then your partner is, one, probably not going to really hear you because they're like, you're crazy. Like, that doesn't make any sense. I listen to you all the time. What are you talking about? I'm literally listening to you right now. And they'll never say, well, I wonder what a little bit of the truth. They probably won't even go there because they're just like, that whole thing I can throw in the trash because you're making no sense. So, but if you're having a moment emotionally, it can be hard to do that. But that's what you eventually want to get to. Shanique, right off the bat, is using all that language. She's using, I feel like, and then instead of saying, you never, and I can almost see the gears in her head saying, I want to say you never listened to me, but she says it more from her perspective, which is always more healthy, which is to say, I feel like I have a lot of needs regarding being heard and understood that aren't happening. Instead of saying, you never listened to me, okay? And this gives Randall a much greater ability to be calm because he's not being attacked or accused of anything and actually hear her and maybe change. But let's rewind that because I think this is a good example.
I'm going to be honest, like, I feel like they kind of like ask a lot about like how I'm feeling and like really embracing of like my feelings and my emotions and stuff. And so like that has been something I feel like I guess I didn't realize how much I needed.
Right. I didn't realize how much I needed that. It's not your fault. I just discovered, and that could really help if she wants to be with Randall, which she does, right? Because she gave the ultimatum, did she not? Yeah. So she could say, this is kind of on me. I feel like you know, when I'm talking to these other men, they really take interest in me. And then I think, well, why doesn't Randall do that? But I really think, well, maybe I didn't know I needed that, and I didn't ask for it. I didn't express it. I wasn't even really trying to engineer that. So maybe that's kind of on me. Now, in your head, you might be thinking, it's kind of on it's kind of Randall's fault too. But here's the thing, especially for those of you who were raised by people who didn't pay attention to you or weren't attuned to you well enough. People want to please you. They want you to feel better. They don't want to hurt your feelings. Baseline. There are defenses that get in the way. There's misunderstandings that get in the way. But you don't have to engineer someone to love you. Humans evolved, aside from a few psychopaths in the one end of the bell curve. We evolved to couple. We evolved to love. We evolved to have empathy. We develop in ways that promote caring for other human beings. So you just have to exhibit pain and a kind of an obvious path to relieving your pain that your partner will naturally step. You don't have to tell them. Sometimes you do, and sometimes it helps. But so that's what she's doing. She's like, I didn't even know I needed this. And so this naturally will give Randall a chance to be like, oh, the answer, occurs to him. Oh, she's not telling me this directly. She's not barking at me. She's not yelling at me. So I can kind of feel free to be relaxed enough to like consider how to help her. I know the answer. It's like the kid. Anyway, so I know the answer, and I can listen to you more. And she'd be like, oh, yeah. So she's doing a really healthy job communicating that and owning her own feelings.
Being torn between Zay and Nate, I feel like both of those guys have been vulnerable in different ways and have said things that they kind of want to see in our relationship. So I think it does make me a little unsure, and I wish I could be as sure as some of the other girls.
Yeah, I mean, what are you supposed to do? Because on, say, Love is Blind, you have 15 people to date, and if you don't hit it off with someone, you just go home. A lot of the people just go home, right? But here, if you don't find someone, I don't think that's even considered really an option. I'm sure it could be, but you'll be kicked off the show or something. So, and as people are starting to, pair off, there's already, I think, 3 informal couples. So for her, Shanique, she has 3 men to choose from: Hunter, Nate, and Zay. She's saying she likes Nate and Zay. Well, what if Nate and Zay don't like her? So it gets a little difficult. Yeah, I can imagine this being an overwhelming emotional experience. It's interesting that Netflix, I wonder how Netflix comes up with these ideas, because it's, when you hear it on paper, you're like, come on. But then you see it play out, you're like, oh, yeah, I guess that would be a way at discovering who you are, a way at discovering how much you love someone, a way at discovering the contrast between your partner and you're trying on a new person. It's like a hall pass, what they call. So, yeah, and I could see it being very difficult, as Shanique is displaying.
I thought I was really in control of this situation, and I had this idea that honestly this was gonna be about making Randall realize that I was the person for him. Yeah. I mean, I guess we could let all of them off the hook because this is the first time this show has been made, so they wouldn't know, because it's such a hard thing to imagine how it would play out. So she's saying, well, my primary thought was I'll go on the show and 1, he'll see me dating someone else and that will make him want to be with me. And 2, he'll experience someone else and discover look at, me, no one can compete with me. I mean, she's not saying that, but that he'll be motivated, Randall will be motivated to actually commit and get married to me because I want to move forward with this. And now she's faced with the possibility that it's backfiring, that she's actually going to lose Randall, and she's just now reckoning with that, which is it's a hard thing to accept. And then you think well, I was the one that dragged him on the show. What was I doing? Now,
one could conclude that if the relationship is that fragile, then maybe it wasn't for the best. But either way, it's going to be pretty painful. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.